Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Need, and today I am joined by, one of my oldest clients, not by age, but by duration. Isaac and I worked together, must have been around that 2014, 2015 range. And since we worked together for a few years, since then, he's gone on and done a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to dive into, culminating into right now being a licensed physical therapist working in cancer rehabilitation and palliative care, which honestly is a great rabbit hole to go down, especially when it comes to communication. So, Isaac, welcome to the podcast, man. Long
Yeah,
time.
thank you so much for having me, man. I feel like it's kind of come full circle a little bit. I remember, yeah, being your client so long ago, driving in a snowstorm to Ottawa to train with you
Mm-hmm.
years ago now. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
I think I
Oh, yeah.
was 17 maybe when I started, 18.
Yeah.
So 27 now.
Tell
It's
me a little bit about your journey so far. I know you lived in Ireland, you moved back to Canada. Like, tell me about what happened in that time frame.
Yeah, so when I would have been working with you originally, I was just starting. I was living in North Bay at the time at Canadore College, um, doing their strength and sports conditioning program. And somewhere around there, a couple Irish guys came over and basically said, "Look, we have a great opportunity for you to transfer some credits, and you can go right into a Bachelor's of Science program for under the same name, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a really great opportunity." So at the time, I remember I looked around and I didn't really see a lot of options in Canada outside of exercise science or kin or something like that. So I kind of jumped at the opportunity. At the time, I wanted nothing more than to be a strength and conditioning coach. So I went over for a year and a half, went to school, finished my bachelor's degree. In Ireland, the school system's a little bit different. So the fourth year is kind of considered like almost like an additional if you want to go on to do a master's or something. So I didn't do that. I did my third, graduated, felt okay. And then it was during COVID actually that I don't know if I would say it was a complete change of heart, but it was just I felt like it was time for a new direction.
Hmm.
So I took a bit of a gamble to say the least, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to go back to school after however long it had been. I think 4 years, 5 years at that point. I went back to do my honors year, all during COVID and everything like that. Um, did my fourth year, and then I got into physio school there. I didn't even apply in Canada, to be honest. At the time, my thought was maybe I'll graduate here and then work there for a few years, but that didn't work out. I ended up moving back here, so now where I am, essentially. So that's the Cole's notes.
Did you want to stay in Ireland, or was moving home kind of the plan?
Yeah, I'll be blunt about it. I mean, I did want to stay in Ireland. At the time, I met someone.
Mhm.
So my ex partner at the time lived here, so I didn't want to do distance at the time.
Right.
And I think, like a lot of people, not to even go into it really, but at the same time, I think like a lot of us, COVID was really hard.
Yeah.
Especially that my fourth year, I think did a big number mental health wise. Like I was living with a stranger in their attic essentially, random town. I didn't know anyone because I was coming years after my class had already graduated, so I didn't know a single person in the class. I was by myself there, and then they subsequently locked down and everything, so I couldn't really do anything but just sit in an
Oh,
attic basically all day studying for months and months. I didn't come home for Christmas or anything, so at that point, I was just like, once I started my master's the next year, I was like, the second this is done, I'm out of here. Like I've changed my mind pretty quickly.
fair enough.
Yeah.
What did you do in those, that gap 4 years between
Mhm.
graduating with your bachelor's and then moving back and starting physical therapy school?
Yeah. So, in that gap, so right during my year when I was not my fourth year, essentially my third year, I got a placement at a gym called Body Smith Performance. So there was very much a specialty gym, invite only, and it was really just meant for athletes. Largely the client base there was for the most part hockey players.
Okay.
We had some rugby players, and they were pretty much all fairly high level. And so I did an internship there, and I ended up getting hired on. So I worked there for, I want to say, just under 2 years, like maybe a month or two,
Okay.
where I just really specialized a lot more in kind of athlete development. Specifically hockey, I would say, if I'm being honest. I mean, we had some rugby players and here and there, but mostly hockey. And then after that, um, I mean, without this, I don't know if I would be where I am today, to be honest. But I ended up leaving there for bigger and better things at Good Life. So I
Oh,
didn't.
geez.
Yeah, so I left for what I thought was, I think, a better opportunity there financially and kind of personal development wise.
Hmm.
Um, and I was training there up until lockdown essentially. So I was there for, I don't know, 9, 10 months or so, going on a year. And then that's when it was a wrap at that point,
Yeah,
to be
fair enough.
honest. Yeah.
So, how do you go from obviously when people go into physio school, they're thinking, okay, we're going to do injury rehab. We're going to do, I want to work with athletes is what you hear the most. And
Yeah.
I'm sure for you, it was like, all right, well, I've been working in strength and conditioning. I've been working with athletes. I'm going to go get this higher level degree and then I'm going to keep working with athletes. What changed?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really good question. I think I'll have to go back a little bit because I know you like the psychology aspects of things and
Absolutely,
everything. And
man.
I've so I think for me, because I assume people will watch this and be like, why would you go to Ireland and not just go to Canada? I mean, it's, the writings in between, between the lines a little bit. I mean, I had a really rough time in high school and even college when you would have known me, I was a bit of a
Yep.
mess. So, um,
I wouldn't say
you
you're a
know,
bit of a mess. You were trying to figure out who you were. There was a lot of identity seeking for sure.
100%. And so I think for me, it was despite, especially if I go back to high school, despite, being a kid, like failed multiple classes, really had a hard time, never paid attention, skipped class all the time, was never like I basically taught myself how to be a student when I was in my master's, to be honest with you.
I think we most of us do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was the first time in my life I'd ever really studied or taken things really seriously. Um, and so that closed a lot of doors, unfortunately, for sure. Um, but even during that, I always was, for whatever reason, just like a bit of a dreamer, I think. And I remember I always had kind of a proclivity towards medicine and the medical side of things. So, I'd be sitting there with a 50 average being like, I want to be a doctor one day. So, it doesn't always line up, but I think it was kind of life that took me there. I mean, I always had the background of really finding medicine super interesting. But then I also love coaching.
Hmm.
So I was like, to me in my head at the time, I was like, what's the ultimate marriage between the two? And to me, that was physical therapy, essentially. I was like, I felt like that married the two worlds that I loved a lot, which was the medical side of things and the strength and conditioning aspects of things. And
For
it kind of
sure.
has played out like that, to be honest. So
Well, I mean,
in
you're not
some ways,
necessarily working with high performers anymore.
oh no, 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 I'm not. So that's where the medical side of my interest really took off, to be honest. Like
S-
really took off.
So when you graduated from your master's, you getting your license.
Hmm.
How did you find your way into cancer rehab?
So again, we'll have to go back a little bit. When I was doing clinical rotations, again, you're describing sort of this process that a lot of us go through, where you're trying to figure out like what kind of clinician do I want to be, what population would I like to work with, and so I completely understand. Most people would think like, why wouldn't you just go with athletes? You have the background and everything. But to be completely honest, like on rotations, what I found most drawn to and what I enjoyed the most, that made the time go by the fastest, was actually working with geriatrics, to be honest. So that
Really?
was originally, yeah, geriatrics and neurology were the two fields that I found most interesting because I felt like they were areas that were always challenging me,
Right.
and it never felt like I was just, kind of stuck in a bit of a loop. So I was drawn to that, and I really liked acute care. Like I really thought it was super engaging, and I felt like we really made a positive difference for people. So I was more drawn to that. And then when I came back, I actually did work in a clinic
Hmm.
for about a year and almost 2 years as well. So I spent, because the process to get registered and everything took almost a year before I could even write the
Yeah.
exam. So it took a really long time. So I was working in a clinic as an assistant and got a lot of great exposure there, in fairness.
Hmm.
That's at some point worth diving into because that shaped a lot in terms of everything really. But it ended up pushing me towards, I think, the acute care, and I ended up getting a great job. And I started in cardiology and then have I'm currently in cancer care and palliative essentially, but
Well,
I don't regret it.
oh no, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't believe that you would, because I mean it's such a dynamic environment. You're dealing with people at a very sensitive time in their lives. There's a different opportunity there to impact people, and movement is such a gift. And in a
Hmm.
lot of these instances, when dealing with chronic illness, movement is one of those things that gets taken away.
Oh, that was something that didn't. I don't like. Again, I know, Paul, that you had your situation with your knees and everything, and I know I can only
My
imagine. Yeah,
situation.
I know. I'm dancing around it a little bit. It was terrible, man.
Yeah.
And I know I've heard you talk about um, kind of how difficult that was
Yeah.
to manage afterwards, right? And losing a lot of that, losing the independence and losing your ability to get around freely and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, there's nothing that says that more than when you're working with people who are very acutely unwell, unfortunately, and have
Hmm.
lost a lot of that, or are kind of at the precipice where, that the baseline may be new now. Like
Right.
we may not be able to go back anymore, right?
Mm.
We might need to try and adjust to a new normal essentially. And so helping people navigate that, I think, has been really difficult at times for sure. But it can be very rewarding trying to help people maintain independence.
Oh my God, I could see that being
Yeah.
so much more rewarding than working with an athlete. Like,
100%,
so
man.
I mean, full disclosure, like when you and I were working together, I was still working full time for the insurance company. So
Hmm.
I got exposed to a number of very unwell individuals who were so
Hmm.
unwell or mentally or physically that they couldn't work.
Hmm.
And that was where I was first exposed to the gift of, like, how much a gift health is, and
Hmm.
how much we take it for granted. Um, some of the wins that I was able to get with those individuals hit harder than any PR I've ever helped a client get. And I think there's almost this illusion where working with the highest level performers is going to be the biggest payoff that you can get as a coach, and it's simply untrue.
Hmm. No, I mean, how can I describe this? And this is going to be maybe a terrible comparison, but I found absolutely working with athletes was great, especially on the S&C side. It was definitely a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Part of me still miss. I'm sure I know in your
Oh
collegiate
yeah.
S&C days too, you miss like the room. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Like you definitely
100%.
miss that. Like it's not the same. But I find that there's always not that there's not new goals with a lot of our patients, but it's always like kind of chasing the dragon a little bit in the S&C side, right? Like there's always something else. Like you
Yeah.
never can really enjoy it for too long before there's something else that comes up on the horizon that you have to look for.
Hmm.
Whereas, for instance, I mean, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in a lot of the work that I do with palliative, it's not like that, obviously, but that doesn't make it less meaningful, right? And so if I can get someone, and their only goal is to be able to leave the room,
Right.
regardless of how that gets done, like that's a pretty darn big impact. You know what I mean? If
I
that's
would
one of
agree.
the most important things to them is just to be able to spend some time with their family, not feeling like they're sitting in a hospital bed, right? So that's
So
been special, to be honest.
talk to me a little bit about the coaching that goes into that. Because I mean, that has to be probably the pinnacle of what coaching actually means. Because you're dealing with somebody who's truthfully, like, psychologically at the most
Hmm.
fucking vulnerable position possible.
Hmm.
How do you go into those conversations, man?
So it's super funny you ask that because I'm super lucky, um, and have been very lucky throughout my life, honestly, people like yourself included, to be surrounded by people that I find can be very important on the mentorship side, and so I'm been lucky to be around a lot of really great palliative doctors. And before I got the assignment, I knew I was going to get transferred up there, and I was trying to do a lot of kind of reading and just trying to figure out because that's a completely new dynamic for me, obviously, right?
Yeah, of
Like
course.
it's unlike anything that I think most of us have ever done. Is have
I,
those kind of conversations.
dude, so I have to interrupt you because
Yeah.
the way that I describe my kind of intro to disability populations
Hmm.
was within a 2 month span, I went from motherfucking kids in a weight room to trying to
Mm-hmm.
convince a woman that going outside wasn't going to kill her.
100%.
And it
A
was such
hundred
a
percent.
stark
Yeah, it
comparison
is,
for me.
man. 100%. And I came across I'm going to paraphrase here because I'm not going to remember precisely,
Sure.
but essentially the idea of what palliative medicine is. And one of the doctors who was giving this lecture basically says, we take the same approach that a surgeon would, the same scientific backing, the same precision, and everything like that they would to replacing your knee. We take that to the conversation,
Hmm.
right? And so and when I've sat in and listened to them, a lot of these doctors, the way that they're able to sit there and converse with patients and really pull out what's important to them. What are their goals? What are they trying to do? What will make them most comfortable in kind of the last chapter? Um, and so I initially tried to take some of that. I was given some resources and, to some effect, but really, as strange as this sounds, I went into it and completely flipped what I typically do. And for me, the coaching aspect there is less about, to me, it's less about coming on as a coach, coming on as a physiotherapist, and it's far more about letting them determine where we're going and
Hmm.
then letting that determine how much of that coach comes out, right? And so it's the one area of physio that I've always heard about as being the hardest thing for most physios to work in this specific area, is that it's the one place where you are doing, in some ways, the opposite of what you're trained to do, right? And we're trained to restore function in the most generalizable way. But here you're not. Like a lot of palliative patients, you're really not aiming to rehabilitate them, right?
Right.
We're not expecting them to get better. Whatever disease process is underway or anything like that, the decline is going to happen regardless. That's not really the question anymore. The question is what is actually important to them and how do we do that, right?
It's
And so,
it's really funny for me to hear you say that that's the flip side of what you've been trained to do,
mm-hmm,
because what you just described is how I mentor young coaches to approach the
mm-hmm,
coaching relationship. Because
100%.
ultimately, let's like expectations and goals aside, right? Because for most of us, we're not dealing with people in end of life scenarios,
Mm-hmm,
but ultimately, your client is the hero of the story, or your
100%.
patient is the hero of the story. And you're kind of inserting yourself as the guide or the shaman or the expert.
Mm-hmm,
Their goals are what matters, right? Like if you
mm-hmm.
came in guns blazing and we're like, we're gonna get you walking, we're gonna get you out, they'd be like, fuck you, bro.
No, I wouldn't want that either.
Yeah.
Send me someone else.
Yeah,
There's got to be
exactly.
more of you here. Yeah, 100%.
So
No, so,
so
yeah,
go
go on.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to add there that I love that you said that, because it's exactly what you should, I think, be teaching new
Yeah.
coaches.
Yeah.
And the funny thing to me is I remember obviously going through physio school, and it's this constant, what are the goals? What are the patient's goals? What do they want? And I think, I've seen this with others, I've seen it with myself. It's kind of, and even as a coach, it was the same thing where it's someone's coming to you, I know why they're coming to me. And I think the question is, do you?
Right.
Do you really know why they're coming to you? Right. And so, for instance, if I have a patient that comes to me, say, and when I was working in an outpatient setting, with low back pain. Okay, so immediately you're primed. Yeah, they want to get out of pain, they want to get back to activity, whatever. But then they just tell you, I just want to be able to go for a walk with my kid.
Mm,
But there's no qualifier there. There's not, I want to walk pain free. There's not, I want to be able to walk further. It's just, I just want to be able to walk. So then it's, okay, now how do we start pulling it out there? And to me, it's no different than I'm coming to you and say, I want to look better in the mirror.
right.
What does that mean? How do we get you there, right? But I think sometimes we go into these relationships or these, um, whether, relationships on the coaching side, whether it's a patient, clinician situation, whatever it is, we go into it with very preconceived notions, whether we like to admit it or not, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think in so many ways, when you're, let's say, onboarding a new client or something like that, you're like, oh, I know what this person wants.
Hmm.
And it's one of the best lessons I've ever learned is that the best way to get the most out of somebody is to help them figure out what their actual reason for contacting you is. Because like, I want to look better in the mirror. Why? Like, why is my favorite question.
Hmm.
Because I want to be more confident. Why? Well,
Hmm.
because I don't like the way I look naked and I think my wife is going to cheat on me, or, there's a whole bunch of different reasons. Cool. That's fantastic. That's a great motivator. What happens when you reach your goal? That's the next question. And then what?
Hmm.
How does that make you feel? How does that change your life? I feel like in your situation, and especially in the palliative care setting, maybe it is I just want to get out of the room. But why do they want to get out of the room? So that they can spend time with their loved ones. Why do they want to spend time with their loved ones? Because they're going to fucking die.
Hmm. Yeah.
They're like, you must have had to learn such a tremendous amount of empathy getting into this
Oh,
field.
you know what? It's I do think that careers in general do select for certain types at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's weird because I didn't always have that same battery when I was coaching, to be honest. But I could sit there and listen to patients kind of all day, and it never really gets it. That part doesn't really drain. Now, there's other things about the job that drain me for sure, but it's really not that part.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's for whatever reason, I just have a sense of it's what I'm supposed to do. Like I can't think of doing something else. Like I feel like I would be in some way wasting my time here, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a tough question
Yeah, hit
because
me.
I know you.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I love it.
So you're describing yourself as someone who's very empathetic with your clients.
Hmm.
I know you as somebody who is so incredibly hard on himself.
Oh, very.
How do you square that circle?
Hmm. Well, look, man, it's been. I'll be honest. It has been hard to come into practice and dealing with the dreaded and kind of infamous imposter syndrome when you first start practicing on your own. Um, I think that as strange as this is going to sound, what has made me feel at most peace with it is I came into my own. I think when I was coaching, I did well enough, truthfully, and I worked well with clients, got good results, but I never really felt like I had. I don't know if it was an age thing or a career thing, but I never really felt like I was fitting into my clothes a little bit.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Whereas I really feel now that I'm in the clinical side and I'm working with people, I'm just me, right? And so I find that as I've gotten older and I began to accept myself a lot more as just the kind of imperfect person that I am, it's a lot easier for me to forgive mistakes and not saying a certain thing, perfectly or whatever it is. It's more okay for me now. Whereas I think earlier earlier in my life, I was way more preoccupied with this idea of trying to impress. I'll be honest, you guys, you know what I mean? Like all these people that
Yeah.
I was kind of coming up under in a way. Whereas now I'm kind of like, my duty is to them, to the
Yep.
patients, right? And as one of my clinical mentors at one point said to me, you know, as they tell you in drama class, the patient doesn't know the lines
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, right? If you forget to ask this question or don't ask that in the specific order that you've had in your mind, they don't know, right? So relax. You know what I mean? Just talk to them like a normal person. They're a patient, yes, but at the same time, they are just a human just like you. Just talk to them normally. And ever since then, I've just felt a lot more relaxed, to be honest. I don't often beat myself up. Sometimes I do a little bit, but not too often, to be honest.
Well, the reason I asked the question is because like a
Hmm.
lot of us, a lot of us are our harshest critics,
For sure.
and I think we do a great job when dealing with others, but have a lot of trouble,
Hmm.
giving that same sort of grace to ourselves.
Hmm.
And what I've found that very closely mirrors exactly what you're saying is that as we get closer to our purpose,
Hmm.
that shit all falls by the wayside.
For
Like
sure.
if you know that what you're doing has purpose and that purpose is meaningful to you, you can be your authentic self within the pursuit of that purpose. You
Hmm.
really stop caring about what other people think. I see it a lot on the social media side where people will try to be this caricature of themselves,
Hmm.
and ultimately they end up resentful of having to be on social media, or they are unable to get the results that they want through their social media. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to sell yourself on social media and the person that you're trying to sell isn't you, you're going to have a bad time. In your industry, you're not necessarily selling yourself, but you are
Hmm.
still trying to build trust.
For
You're trying
sure.
to create a very strong relationship with the person in front of you. And if you sat down in front of that person and were fake, they could see right through you immediately.
For sure. Especially because a lot of the a lot of the patients I work with, I mean, we've all been there, and insofar, obviously not there, thankfully, but not to that degree of being unwell, hopefully. But I think, on a far smaller example, we've all had a terrible migraine and been in a bad mood and not had an issue saying whatever's on your mind. And look, the patients we deal with are no different. I've seen it happen. You know what I mean? Where myself or another clinician will come in and they just have had enough that day. If you know what I mean? If you're come across as a bit on the phony side, or like you're just annoying them, some of them won't have any problem telling you one or the other. It's kind of the ring of truth a little bit,
Well, I mean,
one
they
way or
got
the
they
other.
got nothing to hold back for.
No, really, right? Like it's who am I other than, nameless person in scrubs that they've seen today, the 50,000th person. But this time I'm just asking them to do something at times they don't really want to do, right? Like we got to get you up. But again, palliative, I do have a different approach to an extent, for sure,
All right,
right? When you're
talk
talking
talk to me
coach.
about that.
So for
What's your
me,
different approach?
number one, I would say, and this is easily to me, it's easy to extrapolate this to coaching. I really do feel that way. Is that again, whether you're a coach, whether you're a physio, whether you're anything, it's what are their goals? And I don't think that that ever fully sunk in until I was truly working with people that I did not have goals for,
Mm,
right? Because you have to remember, if you're on the cancer care unit side of things, at the end of the day, most of those patients, we want to get them home,
right.
right? If you want to look at it, depending on what perspective you're looking at, most of the patients want to go home, of course. From a hospital side, we need beds, whatever it is, we need to get them home in some capacity, right? And so there is kind of intrinsically a goal there of, how do we get you home? There's a lot of different ways. Whereas in palliative side, to be selected there, a palliative physician typically makes a determination that this patient is in the final 3 months of their life,
Right.
typically is the range. And so there really isn't often. Sometimes people do actually get better and, then it becomes more rehab and we try and figure out where they need to go next. But more often than not, I think it's a pretty accurate prediction.
Hmm.
And so I don't go in with any goals. I don't go in with any pretense, any preconceived notions. It's just what do you want to do? I can give you as much or as little as you need. I don't
Mm.
ever have to see you again. Like
Right, because
point
they can
blank.
decline care.
Absolutely. I have to get consent for everything. And I'm more than happy and I am upfront about that from the very start with everyone, of course, but with them especially, I'll even go further and say, look, I don't ever have to come back again. Anything I'm offering, any of the ideas, because often, I'll be honest, patients and families are often kind of like, why is a physio coming here? Like, what are
Right.
you guys going to
Yeah,
do?
fair enough.
And so obviously, as always, I'll explain my role and what I do. But with them, I always try and frame it more as what I do here is I try and help people meet their goals, right? What's your goal? Is your goal to be out of bed? Is your goal to try and maintain the current independence you have? Some people just want to be able to walk every day,
Hmm.
even if it's 5 feet. Just
Right.
that feeling of let me get out of bed, let me just feel like I can still do something is more than enough for some people. Some people's goals are I'm happy where I'm at. I don't really want to do anything else. And if that's the case, there's not much I can do for you, but I'm always happy to come back, essentially. But truly, I don't go in with any sort of, this is what the end goal needs to be, most likely. It's just whatever that person wants,
I like that. I actually really
right?
like that. And that is a very direct parallel to what coaching should be, in my opinion.
Exactly what it should be, right? I don't think it's what it is often, but it ideally is what it should be.
I think there's a few things that kind of jump out to me. Number one being like, I think a lot of people approach the coaching relationship and the client in front of them as an opportunity to flex a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, I can get you from here to there. It's like, yeah, but what does that person actually want? You know, you
Hmm.
said it when you were speaking, you said, I can give you as much or as little as you need.
Hmm.
That should be part of the conversation when working with a new client. Because if you come in guns blazing and they don't have the tools or the habits or the mental fortitude to handle all of those tools that you're giving them, well, they're
Hmm.
going to flounder, right? So there has to be some sort of runway of progression or some sort of, graduated approach. And if you come in there with preconceived notions of what you're going to do, I think you sell the client short to a large degree.
Oh, massively, massively. And I think it can, obviously I'm more on the medical side, but I remember something I learned very early on that has always stuck with me. And it's, again, the only diagnosis as a physical therapist we make are ones in the musculoskeletal realm,
Right.
essentially. We don't make medical diagnosis, but to me, it rings true for those diagnoses. And it just rings true for when you're talking with your clients. And it's listen to the patient, they're telling you the diagnosis. Was said by William Osler. And that's always stuck to me because it's true,
Yeah,
right? And so
100%.
I think we often are like, especially I remember even as a coach, like sometimes I think you fall into the trap of they're coming to me, so it must be they want X, Y, Z, my services. So let me help try and direct them what's best for them. But is that really the best approach? I
I don't
don't
think
really
so.
think so.
I don't think so.
No.
I think you and I align very closely on that one. Um, what have been what's maybe like the biggest lesson you've learned from working with people at the end of their lives?
Hmm. So that's a really hard question because this is the podcast of truth, and I think that that
Yeah.
people actually, it's funny because it's probably the question I get the most when people ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them is they're like, obviously it's always, wow, that's a lot. How do you manage that? And then it's often, what do you take from that? And I don't truly have these really big takeaways in the way that you would think. And the reason for that is this. I don't want to say I don't go looking for it, but I would say I have clinical takeaways for sure. Like there's a lot that I've taken from the experience that I think would make me a better coach and a better listener and a better clinician. Absolutely.
Hmm.
But I think, and I don't know if this is the way you're asking, but I think when a lot of people ask that, what they're really asking is, what have you learned about life? And I would say, I've learned that it ends.
Hmm.
And I think that you learn a lot of practical stuff that's less pretty and less Hallmark cardy. Um, the other big thing that in fairness, I would take away is that was actually a change for me. And this is might be going in a strange direction, but honestly, the importance of family,
Hmm.
believe it or not. And that
I
was
believe
something that
that.
I struggled with a lot, to be honest, for a multitude of reasons. Um, and I think, going through that phase in my 20s that I think some people go through in their teens or whatever, where you're kind of the rebellious youth who just wants to be by themselves and figure life out on their own and all that kind of stuff. But I think seeing people at the end of the line and seeing those families that are so supportive and are there every day it really makes such a difference.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all, man. It's something that I kind of keep in the back of my mind of, as I'm working towards, because I think about death a lot. It's actually something that
Hmm.
keeps me grounded. It keeps me very present. and make sure that I'm taking advantage of every day that I have on this earth, because one day it will end.
Hmm.
And it would strike me as really surprising if you didn't learn any lessons from being around people at that time in their
Hmm.
lives, because I haven't had many people in my life die, but I know
Hmm.
for a fact when I die, no one is going to care what's in my bank account. No one's
Hmm.
going to care about the business that I built. No one's going to care about anything other than, was I a good husband? Was I a good
Hmm.
father? Was I a steward for my community? Right? Did I impact people in a positive manner? I'm not going to go to my funeral with my bank account balance on my forehead.
No.
Your worth is going to be measured by how many people are in attendance to celebrate your life.
You know what my grandfather used to say?
I don't.
There's no U-Haul behind the hearse. You can't
I
take it with you,
like
right?
that.
But it's true. And I will say, and this is, you might call this out and say this is a unhealthy coping mechanism, but I've actually asked a few people, some of the palliative doctors, literally in the last week or two, and it sounds like a crazy question, but I'm just wondering because they have the ultimate hard conversations.
Oh yeah.
Like really, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, they do not have easy conversations. And I asked some of them, I said, do you think about it? Like when you badge out at night and you get in your car and you drive home, do you sit and think? And you know what? The resounding answer pretty much across the board was no. And I think that is, to some degree, a necessity working in that field to an extent, right? And I think you, unfortunately or fortunately, I think it's a tight balance between I need to allow myself to be very empathetic. I need to allow myself to be myself around them, around patients, and show that. But at the same time, I can't allow myself to cross a boundary where I'm thinking about this a lot.
I'm glad you mentioned the boundary piece, because it's
Hmm.
something that a lot of coaches struggle with.
Oh.
They take on they take on the struggles of their clients. If their client is going
Hmm.
through a divorce, or their client's going through a depression, or mental health issues, they kind of take it on, and they try to be the solution finder in all aspects of that person's life. When in reality, you need to have boundaries, because their baggage is not yours to carry, right? Like, I already have my own backpack on. I don't
Hmm.
need to put yours on as well. And
And
that
quite frankly,
doesn't,
you can't.
yeah, exactly. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be supportive. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold space for that person.
Hmm.
It does mean that as soon as the conversation's over, I put it aside.
Yeah. And you have to, right? And I think some people might hear that and think, wow, that sounds cold. But you have to remember there's a lot of other patients too, right?
Yes.
And they're all in really hard times. And it doesn't mean that you care any less or that you want to make sure that everyone gets the highest level of care at the end of the day. And when I think about it on the coaching side, I completely agree in terms of you not taking on all of this stuff. And you know more than anyone from a coaching perspective, you have probably heard the deepest and darkest secrets of so many people
Absolutely.
without asking. And it is
Hmm.
hard, this idea of transference and not taking that stuff on and being able to truly put that away. We can
Hmm.
maybe bring that up once in a while or think about that, but otherwise that will kind of stay somewhere else, because I think otherwise it just leads to burnout at the end of the day,
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah. Yeah. It
And
would
it
have
doesn't
to.
take long, right?
No, the other thing, like, and this might sound cold, but if you give your clients an inch, they will take a mile in a lot of instances.
For
So
sure.
if that client is going through a challenging time, and you say, "Hey, like, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Here's my phone number." They're going to blow up your phone, and they're going to, try to take as much as they can. And it's not from any nefarious reason, right? It's not like they're trying to be bad people. It's they're in survival mode, and you gave
Hmm.
them a life, like a buoy to hold on to, and they're going to hold on to it because they're drowning.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's a
And
reason why lifeguards throw the buoy
yeah,
and they don't
exactly.
reach for the person.
100%. And you know what's funny is, and this is one thing that I think as a coach you have it a bit easier at times, or we have it a bit easier as as like a registered healthcare provider, is that I hate to say this, at least we have an easy excuse to go to. And it's not really even an excuse. Like we have standards of practice we have to follow,
Yep.
right? And so, for instance, I mean, I live in a small enough town. When I worked in outpatient, it wasn't uncommon for me to run into someone that I knew from
Oh yeah.
clinic or whatever it was. But it's really easy if that person comes up, because we never, I would never give out my personal phone number or anything like that. So if someone ever came up and started talking about, I don't know, whatever the injury or situation was, I always have that to fall back on and say, listen, I appreciate it, in a very nice way, but hey, I'll see you X, Y, Z. And because it's not professional to talk about it in public. Whereas as a coach, I mean, there's not really any governing body to tell you you can't, right? And I think that, let's be honest, I think some coaches fall into the trap of wanting to be there for all their clients and always wanting to be super accessible. But I think it gets really hard to manage at times.
It does. And I mean, my statement to clients whenever they're struggling is, hey, as your coach, is there anything
Hmm.
that I can do to support you? I
Yeah.
never offer my support. I ask what kind of support that they feel they need.
Hmm.
And that kind of saves me. The other thing that I do with regards to boundaries, especially emotionally, is I limit my communication with clients to either email or our app. Because
Yeah.
at that point, I can choose when I reply and how I reply. And that's made a phenomenal difference for me. Um, but you're right. Like we are in a position where ultimately, I put it this way when I'm talking to young coaches, you're gonna spend more time with your clients than their doctors, their psychologists, their dentists, their a
Hmm.
lot of times their spouses, if the spouse is working full time, like they're gonna interact with you probably more often than some of the closest people in their lives. And that's a phenomenal asset when it comes
Hmm.
to forming meaningful relationships, but it's also a massive challenge to maintain the client's autonomy. Because
Hmm.
if you take on their baggage, you're removing their agency.
Hmm.
And that is the single most important thing. And you touched on it without saying it. If the client is driving the ship,
Hmm.
if they're in the driver's seat, even at the end of their life, they're maintaining agency,
100%.
which is so paramount to any level of success.
And to me, it should be paramount in what we do,
I agree.
right? We're guides, not parents,
Hmm.
in a lot of ways, right? Like it really needs to be client driven, patient driven,
I agree.
right? It's their goals that matter, right? We might have the expertise to get them there, but it's their goals, it's not ours, right? And it makes me wonder how much progress gets lost with coaches, especially in, even if it's a slow process, turning what was once the client's goals into their goals, essentially. For what to what end, I don't know.
What sort of things, like obviously you've had a number of different experiences from like S&C to
Hmm.
cancer rehabilitation um, to now palliative practice. What are some of the more tactical errors that you see clinicians making?
Mm, that's a really good question, because it does depend on the setting to an extent, for sure. Like first of all, understanding that, and I might jump back and forth to coaching and everything because I've
Sure.
done both now. I would say obviously certain areas like palliative care, even cancer care to an extent, I think they are considered a bit more on the specialized area to a slight extent, or a bit more. They just require, we'll say, a little bit more practice and maybe a quick review and a bit of help to get used to, because it is just different. I shouldn't say specialized area because it's really not technically, but you get what I mean. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a different patient base that most people aren't used to.
Right.
So it helps to have some mentorship there. But I think from a tactical standpoint, I think that most people are far less good at getting information from people than they think they are.
That's a
Far less
fantastic
good.
insight.
I think that I'm trying to think about how I want to say that, how I want to word this. I think that people are satisfied. A lot of coaches, a lot of, some physios that I've worked with in the past, they're satisfied when they've heard what they want to hear, not what the patient or not what the client in front of them wants to say. And I think there's a
Mm.
really big difference there. And sort of what you were talking about, again, I've worked with you, so I know how you work. Um, it's that idea of, again, we go back to, I know why this person's contacting me. They want to lose weight. They want to get stronger. Okay, they told me those things. Okay, now we're good. We can move on and go down that rabbit hole. But is that really what they want? Is that really what they want to say to you in that moment?
So I call that listening with the goal of responding versus
Yep,
listening with the goal of understanding.
100%. And it's a
Yeah,
skill to an
it is.
extent. It really, really is. It's very hard, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think, and especially if you're in an environment like a clinical environment where you're pressed for time and need to move from patient to patient,
Hmm.
there probably is that tendency to rush through the process. But, the best
For sure.
clinicians are the ones who are going to take that time.
Well, let's think about for a second. Um, and I had no clue, for the record, what you wanted to talk about today. So I had this thing in the back of my mind that I wasn't sure if you're going to touch on, but this is kind of bringing into it. But
Yeah, let's do it.
the big area that I've been focusing on lately, outside of acute care, because I still want to keep up my skills on the MSK side, especially, is low back pain.
Okay.
And so to make a long story short, I was in contact with Stu McGill fairly recently. We'll say about a year ago or so,
Okay.
and had some conversations with him about practice and everything like that. And he's a guy who's got, the very long assessment. I think it's 3 hours long.
Yep.
And so much of it is conversation based. And
Yes.
of course, it's a big assessment. There's exercise, there's all kinds of stuff involved with it. But he is someone who, when I've seen bits and pieces of his assessment, is very similar to one of my lecturers, Kieran O'Sullivan, who's also, ironically, a low back pain expert. And anyone listening who's interested in that should look him up. One of our classes, he really only takes consults now on very difficult patients. And typically he'll ask for their permission and say, listen, I'm willing to essentially waive the fee, of course, but would you be willing to let students sit in on this assessment? And so it's typically virtual or whatever. And I found for him, he was an expert at quickly identifying what is important to this person and how can I ask specific questions to get more information out of them. And
Mm.
so we found at the time, I mean, it seemed like a magician was in front of us. He was
Yeah.
asking stuff that I was like, why was he asking that? And then 2 minutes later, you're like, oh, now everything's starting to connect.
Yep.
Now I see why he was asking that. Right. And so that to me was a formative experience and helped show me how much we miss at times in conversation when it's that idea of I'm listening to just respond, not understand the person in front of me.
I think that's probably one of the most, well, I wouldn't say probably, it's absolutely one of the most important pieces of any intake process
Hmm.
is information gathering. I'm currently working with a mentor myself on the functional health side of things. So gut
Hmm.
health, hormones, that sort of thing. And one of the, like, this is just a random piece of our intake as it stands now is we ask our clients about their digestion.
Yep.
Cool. Very innocuous question. How is your
Hmm.
digestion? Rate it 1 to 5, one being, you are either constipated or have diarrhea, 5 being your poops are perfect. You know,
Hmm.
where do you fall? And people will be like, oh, I'm a 3. I'm good. Like I have normal digestion.
Hmm.
But what's normal for them is what is normalized. It's not what is normal.
Hmm.
So we've run into situations where a client will be like, no, my digestion's fine. Yet they have blood in their stool, painful
Yeah.
excretion. It's like, but that's how it's always been for them. So if we don't ask qualifying questions, we're going to miss probably big pieces. There was one example. I had one of my clients, a female client, uh, we ask about their menstrual cycle.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, my menstrual cycle is regular, happens every, what did you say? It happens every 14 days. I was like, that's not normal. And her
Yeah.
periods are painful and there's heavy bleeding, but
Oh
to
God.
her, it was normal. So I'm
Hmm.
just trying to highlight the fact that information gathering is a very active process, whether you're dealing with MSK, functional health, or just general nutrition coaching. If you're
Hmm.
not diving deep into your client and trying to get the most broad and like, you don't want to be a mile long and an inch deep.
No.
You want to be as deep as possible and as wide as possible and have all the pieces of information so that you can be able to serve this person. And that's
Absolutely.
something you've hammered on during this conversation. And I mean, I didn't know where this conversation was going to go. I had a few
Hmm.
ideas of what I wanted to talk about. Truth be told, I didn't really want to talk about X's and O's because honestly, I think it's boring.
Oh, it really is.
I think MSK is boring. I think training, sorry, I
Yeah.
shouldn't say that because I was going to say training's boring. I'm still a nerd. I still love training. I
Yeah.
still love
For sure.
nutrition. I love all these things. But what fascinates me the most is people.
For sure.
And one of the things I was most excited about having you on was to discuss working with people at their most vulnerable points.
Hmm.
Because I could imagine, as you've mentioned, it's completely changed the way you practice.
For sure. And it will, I think that will stick with me forever, to be honest. And you know what's funny is I think that it's always interesting, and the podcasts of yours that I like the most are, I mean, let's be honest, sometimes it's, the table talks are great, but the training ones now, I'm kind of like, I mean, not his specifically, but you know what I mean? Where it's just like,
Yeah.
do I want to hear about training for 4 hours straight? Not really. But I think it's always more interesting when you kind of are trying to cross paths with
Yeah.
two different professions that are related but not quite related. And so that's advice that I've given physio students that have reached out to me, or when I was a coach, it was this. I always have kind of had this mentality is that I think some of the best learning I ever did was not from other physiotherapists.
Mm-hmm.
It's from occupational therapists, it's from coaches, it's from physicians, it's from all kinds of people because to me we all come at things from a completely different perspective, and there's no reason why I can't take your coaching advice and think about, okay, how can this work? How can this improve the care that I provide patients? Even if it's just how do I help them feel more comfortable opening up about what their goals are to me? It's all the same in the long run in terms of we're just trying to help these people the most we can.
Dude, the highest achievers that I speak to are the ones that are able to parallel think the best.
100%.
Like I learned very little of my education outside of, the X's and O stuff. Very little of the stuff that I read is
Hmm.
about strength and conditioning or nutrition. It's about psychology. It's about marketing. It's about um, the human condition.
Hmm.
Because I want to know the person in front of me as deeply as possible. Because if I don't know them, I can't help them.
Paul, it's funny you say that because have you read the book Behave?
I have not.
I think that, and I recommend this to every single health. I'm annoying with this book. I recommend it to every healthcare worker that I run into. I recommend it to coaches because that changed the way I practice. It changed the way that I think I view the world to an extent.
Who's the
It's by
author?
Robert Sapolsky. He wrote
Oh,
another, yeah, again, exactly, very famous guy. Very, very smart, to say the least.
yeah.
And so, what this book is, and my kind of way that I would sell it to people is it's really about choices that we make every day. It's not about the specific choices, but it's about what goes into the choices and decisions that we make. And at each chapter, it starts from 1 second before I brought that book up. What was going on in my brain? What was from the neurological side to the neuroscience side? What was going on with my hormone levels at the time?
Hmm.
And it goes back back to an hour before that. a day, 10 years, when you were developing as a fetus, essentially, and all of the things that led up to you making the decisions that you make today. And what I personally took away from that a lot was it removed a lot of the judgment towards
Mm,
other people,
yep.
and understanding that I don't think that when we're working with clients, we're working with patients, whatever it is, however they're presenting to us, especially on the communication side, especially on the behavior side, a lot of these people, like a lot, we don't choose a lot of that stuff. I know we like to assign a lot of agency to that, but behind every action, behind all these words that they're telling you, there is at times decades
Yep.
of things that have happened that have led this person down this path,
Absolutely.
for better or for worse. And so
Yeah.
I find after reading that, after quite frankly growing up a little bit, I just have a very come as you are mentality. It just,
I
however
love
people
that.
are with me, it is what it is. I don't blame them for the way they're acting.
Say what you will about Joe Rogan, but he has a quote that I find myself coming back to a lot where he's like, I just look at everyone as babies.
Hmm.
We were all babies.
Yeah,
So if
it's
I
true.
look at this person in front of me and remember, hey, this person was a baby once,
Hmm.
gives you a ton of grace, removes a ton of judgment.
100%.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, man. I think, as far as ending the serious part of the podcast, I think that was
Hmm.
a perfect way. So let's get into some quick hit questions.
100%. Let's hit it.
What's been the coolest place that you visited in your travels?
The coolest place I visited in my travels. I'm going to be super boring with it and probably say the Cliffs of Moher
Oh,
in
that's not
Ireland.
boring at all. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Again, you get used to it. I lived there for years, so it's kind of like, okay, of course it's somewhere in Ireland,
Oh,
but that
okay,
was
fuck
really
better.
cool. Yeah, I loved. Yeah, I really do like Ireland a lot. It is my speed for sure.
Yeah.
Nice and
Um,
slow.
will you ever compete in powerlifting again? And will I be your coach?
You know what's super funny about that is I've been thinking about it. I really have been. I haven't told anyone. This is breaking news to you.
Breaking news on the podcast: Isaac Taylor going to compete in powerlifting again.
I fell out of love. I did. Not just with powerlifting, but just I think with training to an extent. I
Hmm.
think it was just disenfranchised for a lot of ways. But man, am I back. And I'm loving it, to be honest. I haven't had this much fun in the gym since I was, I don't know, 16,
I love it, man.
and doing lat pull downs because I saw Brandon Lilly video where he said you need big lats, so you got to do 5 sets of 20 every day
That's
for,
a
and I
that's
was
an
just
old
doing it
Chuck
for months.
Vogapol thing.
100%. But that was the best. I loved it.
Um, if you had a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone
Hmm.
to read, what would it say?
Hmm. Damn, that's a good one for everyone to see. Hmm. I have a cliche one, but it actually does mean a lot to me, especially given the trajectory my life has taken. And it would probably just say never stop,
I think that's a great quote.
honestly.
I
And
love it.
because I told someone the other day, and I know it's this rapid fire. The last thing that I'll say really quickly is I have absolutely never been one of these, quite frankly, super disciplined, super high willpower people at all. But
Mhm.
I've just literally never stopped.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like I'll just never. I've never.
You
Yeah, I
always
just
worked your
can't.
dick off.
100%. And it did not matter how many times I failed or screwed up. I'll just keep trying until, because to me, I'm like, eventually we'll get there.
Who's one
Yeah.
person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Oh my God. That's a good one. I was going to say something, but I've lost contact with them, to be honest. So now that makes it more tricky. You know what I was going to say
Who?
was Mr. Billions himself, Brady.
Not a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Not a chance. No, he's not suitable for the podcast life. Who would I really like you to interview that I could get on? Hmm. Interesting. That's a really good question. I'll be honest with you. You know who I actually really like, and this is going to be, we got another round of breaking news here. You've already had them on before, but I really think every time they come on, they show growth and really intelligent conversation is actually Stu Locke. And the reason that's shocking is because me and him, I have no issue admitting here, and he would say the same thing. We've butted heads in the past, all kinds of stuff. But I
Yeah, me
really
too.
think, yeah, exactly. I think he has an interesting perspective on things, and I think he's grown a lot. And every
Oh,
time, I think he's been on your podcast twice now, and each time he comes on, I notice new things about him, and I really respect people that are able to grow
I agree.
in one way or the other. To be honest,
I agree.
you know what I mean. So mad respect for him. To be honest, I really do.
Isaac, my man, this was an
Hmm.
absolute pleasure. It was so great to catch up with you. And honestly, like, I know you're going to have trouble accepting this, but I'm
Hmm.
very proud of you for the
I
growth
appreciate
that
that,
you've
man.
gone through, the way that you represented yourself, and the way that you have literally never stopped.
Yeah,
It's amazing to see, because I knew you as a very young man searching for himself, and
yeah.
I see someone who is absolutely his authentic self, living his purpose in front of me today.
That means the world to me. It really does. And
Yeah,
see, I can take that now.
I love
I
that.
don't think I could before, but to me, like that means a lot because I know it's true,
Yeah.
right?
I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes, but I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure.
I hope that we chat more soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.